can see you there.
Something big is going on here.
From hunting ghosts to Bigfoot.
Paranormal, UFOs, true crime, and more.
We won't just be spouting articles.
I was researching for your entertainment.
The beginning of a new world.
The best guac you'll ever fucking eat.
True story.
It's basically like one day you walk outside and you see that the ants are playing with matches.
This is the Black Cat Report. See you on the other side.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of the Black Cat Report. My name is Gil, and joined with this evening by a full house of hosts. We got Selena.
Hello.
Joey.
Hey.
And Betsabe.
Hi.
Y'all, tonight we are so excited to bring you one of the folks who we look to for ideas. Who we look to for information, who we look to for inspiration. I'm talking, of course, about Seth Breedlove. Seth, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thanks for asking me.
Of course, man. Yeah, so let's see here. I mean, I guess to just give a little intro to our listeners, if they're somehow not familiar. Seth, you're the founder, if not one of the founders of Small Town Monsters. You've produced at least 16 documentaries and shows, and you directed at least 21. At least this is what your IMDb says.
I know. This is the only reason I started laughing is that I did a show yesterday, and it started out with the host telling me I had directed 13 movies, and then I had done one about a week before, and he had said somewhere in the neighborhood of 16 to 17. I think it's like 21 now. Is where we're at. Okay. But I'm not positive if that number is correct, and it wouldn't include any of the YouTube content that I've also made. So
we are joined with tonight by a prolific director, producer.
Someone with no life.
No. You honestly, So the way I've been kind of like setting this up to folks, you know, like close family and friends that are asking you like, hey, what's coming up on the show? What do you guys like? We've got Seth Breedlove, and they're like, yeah, that guy's done everything and I'm like, I know, like you've dipped into so many things that honestly I can say fit into the exact niche, into the exact category that I think that we strive for as a show, which you don't always just cover. Let's just say, like, I haven't seen you do Roswell, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, like we'll do cover small. We're get there. But you cover small town monsters, you know, as is the name. You know, you cover a lot of these local folklore, these local legends, these local cases, and. Well, I'll just jump into it. So I do want to start off, and this is a bit of a long one, so I'm sorry, but I think it's important for folks that might not be familiar with your work yet. Something I appreciate about your style and your delivery of the story is your willingness to weave a tale with different colored threads, right? So from witnesses to objective historians to acting out famous accounts of events on down to folks that sometimes seem straight up skeptical, right? I know when I'm watching one of your films, and this is what I love about your work, and especially just Small Town Monsters in general, is I'm going to learn about the subject and not watch a documentary that tries to convert me beyond my own assessment of the research that was done. It's not preaching to the choir in a sense. It's more so just saying like, hey, we jumped in, we got into the case, and like this is what we found, and we're going to deliver it to you in a solid and a coherent way. And I love that about the work. It's not just History Channel at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, that's the key. Like when we were starting out, everything Minerva came out in 2015, and at that point in time, the only thing on television relating to the paranormal, specifically like Bigfoot, because that was the subject of that movie, was Finding Bigfoot, which is very much like a we're going to convince you Bigfoot is real show. And I've never, I'm not, I mean, also I'm really skeptical of a lot of this stuff myself. It doesn't mean I don't love the subject matter, or the stories, but I tend to be very skeptical. So that approach was just born out of the fact that so much of what was on television when we started out was like geared at convincing you in some way that everything was real. And I don't, first of all, that's not objective, which is like if you're attempting to be like an actual documentarian, your job is supposed to be to document document the stories you're telling, and the style of doc that we started out with was very much like just basically journalism. Like, we're just going to retell a story, get as many of the facts as we can, and remain completely absent from the telling this, like being the focal point in any way. We've shifted a little bit, like other, like on the trail of Bigfoot, I'm like the guy telling the story. So it's a little different. Like, you'll get my perspective a little bit, but even on those stories, I'm trying to act solely as the storyteller rather than like insert myself into the story. Not that kind of thing can't work. Like, Michael Moore's done that for decades and it works fine. But my style tends to be to keep myself absent from having my voice too involved in the storytelling, if that makes sense. I don't know that I said that right, but
No,
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally tracks. And I kind of leads me to my next question around that. So, would you mind, and you touched a little bit on this, but would you mind walking us through your thought process and your approach to picking, researching, and producing? Right. So I guess in some loose sense, from idea to finalization to realization, like, how does that go?
it has changed a lot just because of the fact that we're doing so much now. I mean, 2015 we made one movie. It was Minerva Monster. 2016 we made released two, Boggy Creek Monster and Beast of Whitehall. And then, by 2017 we were fully embracing that 2 releases schedule. But by 2018, 2019, 2020, it kept ramping up to 3 to 4 per year. And now 2023, we're going to do 5 movies. So there's kind of like a constant cycle. With On the Trail of Bigfoot, it's very easy at this point because that's like my personal project, and I can kind of just pick where I want to go and things that fascinate me about like the Bigfoot topic. So like in 2023, we're going to release On the Trail of Bigfoot, Land of the Missing, which is focused on sort of the darker side of like Alaskan Bigfoot lore, specifically like missing people and things like the Dark Pyramid and, like the UFO sightings, really weird, like Alaskan, like lore. And that was a cool experience because, it's in no way indicative of how we pick a movie. That movie came to us while we were filming Last Frontier. So we were over there shooting On the Trail of Bigfoot, The Last Frontier. And the idea was we were going to shoot that one movie while we were there, but we were up to like 18 interviews while we were there. And there's no way I'm sandwiching 18 interviews into an hour and a half movie. So I started to pick up on threads that were running throughout all the interviews, which was this idea of like Bigfoot taking people, or like there's a lot of indigenous lore that revolves around people being taken by Bigfoot mimicking babies crying to lure women out of houses and then taking them, and like all sorts of like weird stuff. And so that movie actually just came about during the shooting of another movie. And we were there for 17 days. So I was like, well, let's just film 2 movies while we're here. So we did. But with something like Jersey Devil, that was one where like we'd always been asked if we were going to do like a Jersey Devil movie. And so it was just finding the right way in which to do it. And then, a time that made sense for us to make it. But a lot of the time I'll just pick a story that I'm really into. I'm obsessed with the Flatwoods Monster. So that was like a natural to be, placed back in 2018 when we released it. That's my 5-year-old's favorite movie we've made, by the way. He watches it at least once a week, and then we listen to the soundtrack every day when I pick him up from school. So
That is so cute.
You
Yeah, he
can't
loves that
not
one.
feel
Gil?
like a success as a father if like literally your kid is like a Flatwoods Monster, like just like wanting to watch something.
That's exactly
you
how
made.
he says it too. Yeah.
If you are competing, if you are winning out over the Baby Shark song, that is gold.
Yeah. No, it's in our house. in my house, that is the movie that has been on a loop since he was 2 years old. So he's 5. So it's constant. So that one was easy. Mothman was easy. We are getting into difficult territory now because we're kind of past all the major like cryptids that I know we can actually get an audience interested in enough to hopefully support the movie. Apparently I was wrong with Jersey Devil, but the like it is getting more difficult as we go forward, but I mean it all comes down to the people, the human side of the stories that we're telling. I'm into the paranormal, I'm into all this stuff, obviously. These are topics that interest me, but I don't pick the subjects of our movies based on like, oh, I love X monster, we got to make that movie because of that. I typically need to find an emotional hook for myself that'll pull me in to the story. Like for instance, Terror in the Skies. Like I remember when we were doing the research for that, Thunderbirds were not something I was into. I really didn't have a big interest in that subject. But while we were making the movie, I'm from the Midwest. I live in Ohio. So like I'm familiar, and I grew up in a small town. So I'm familiar with like small towns sort of vanishing or like, deteriorating and disappearing. And but when we were in Illinois, we found all these small towns that at one time were really like thriving farm communities that had essentially like disappeared. There was almost nothing left of them. And that really became like this strange sort of like melancholy that hung over that whole production. And I brought it all the way through to the editing process. And I can even remember like during music meetings with Brandon, who does our score, going over the music with him, he kept wanting to do like push further and further toward like the spooky monster sort of sound. And I kept saying like, I really don't care if this is like a scary movie at all. I was like, Brandon was an emo kid when he was younger, which I was too, but I'm like, yeah. I'm like 15 years older than him. So like it's a different era of emo. I was listening to like American football and stuff, but he, I kept telling him like, embrace your emo side. Like with this, you like, we really want to push the emotional side of that. And that like really came into focus during the editing of the movie. But, I have to find some sort of emotional hook or otherwise I just can't. I'm not a horror movie guy either. So I don't think in like scary movie terms. I can, once I'm into an edit or like we're doing the pre-production process and we're coming up with ideas for scenes or whatever for something that has like recreations, I can think in those terms, but I don't inherently have that in me. Like the spooky stuff. It's just not how I'm hardwired. I mean, I grew up on like Christopher Guest movies and This Is Spinal Tap and like, I mean, some of the monster stuff like Ray Harryhausen and that kind of thing, but I'm not hardwired to like be a scary person or a scary storyteller or whatever. So I'm much more in the emo realm.
That honestly, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know. That was surprising.
Yeah.
Is it?
I don't know. I would have thought that you would liked horror movies.
I like, so, I always say when my mom's the one that got me into film. Mm-hmm. And she got me into film by showing me, the Marx Brothers and Ray Harryhausen.
Yes. Wait, hold on. You need to tell me your favorite Marx Brothers movie.
Duck Soup. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Duck Soup's on another level though. I still think that movie is like so far ahead of even some of today's comedy.
A Night at the Races might have been my second, which took me the longest to appreciate. But sorry,
A Night in
Marx
Casablanca
Brothers.
is the one that was the first Marx Brothers movie I saw, and I watched it in a hotel in like Memphis. I remember this very distinctly. But that was my
needs to happen, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was my first Marx Brothers movie. Well, yes. Also like my grandma is Jewish, and like that whole side of my family's Jewish. So like everything about the Marx Brothers appealed to me as a kid, because it was like seeing my uncles or something on on camera.
Please tell me you had Harpo as an uncle, just like sitting there,
God.
just not saying anything, just musical
been
genius
great.
over there.
But yeah, Marx Brothers and Ray Harryhausen is the other thing, and then the other big one that I remember that is horror would be Hammer. She loved Christopher Lee, and still loves Christopher Lee. So like, she introduced me to the horror of Dracula, the Christopher Lee Hammer horror movie, and the other one was the Sherlock Holmes Hound of the Baskervilles that Hammer did, which is a beautiful movie, by the way, like really great. And that's a movie actually that I was able to look to for inspiration for like Bray Road Beast. The opening of Bray Road Beast is entirely inspired by the Hound of the Baskervilles, with like the book and everything. It's the spooky storm and all that. It was all inspired by that. So and Hitchcock, like she loved Hitchcock. She showed me The Birds when I was a kid and things like that. So it's not that I was like against horror. It's just it's not my favorite genre. And I hate gore. Like I'm a giant softie. So like I can't deal with like a lot of gore. So yeah, I like horror. It's just like my favorite movie of this year was Nope. So I like it, but it's not my go-to.
So what got you into it? Like, have you experienced anything that got you into, directing films like that?
Oh, directing. Yeah, it was the Harryhausen stuff. That was the first time. My mom showed me Jason and the Argonauts, which my son also loves. He loves the sword fighting skeletons a ton.
Your son has great taste.
He does. He really does. But the first time, so she showed me Jason and the Argonauts, and that was the first time I can remember being aware that movies were made by people, like that they didn't just appear on a screen, that it was like something people did to create that. And then that was the first time I remember thinking I would like to do that. And I talked about this yesterday with someone, so it's kind of fresh, but I remember, as a teenager, we made short films on Sony Handycams, and then we would edit them on like our iMac, or not the iMac. Maybe it was the iMac. What's the big like color? It was like transparent.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah,
I think it was an
iMac.
iMac.
StarCraft on. Yeah, iMac. I used to edit on that, and then we made these movies. But the movies I made back then were entirely inspired by Christopher Guest, because we loved like what's the Waiting for Guffman was like one of our big. Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, A Mighty Wind all came around that time period, and we're just making our own versions of those things. And then at some point, like I graduated high school, and I thought it was just very unrealistic, like an unrealistic career choice. And it was like at that point in time, because I graduated in 99, you couldn't make a movie without film. And if you did make a movie, the only way to get it in front of anyone was to take it on a festival tour, and then you got to get it picked up by a distributor. And it's just like this whole thing that you can't, realistically at that point in time, you couldn't do it. So I lucked out, because when we made Minerva, starting in 2014, when we started filming it, like YouTube was around, so we had that as an option. Amazon had just launched their video direct platform, so I could post directly for for viewers, like find an audience directly on there. So, but yeah, Hitchcock, going to Universal Studios as a kid probably got me into filmmaking as a career choice. But you asked what my favorite genre is. It's like my favorite genre is documentary.
Makes sense.
I'm very boring as I get older. I find that is the thing I can watch the easiest, but I do watch a ton of really dumb, bad action movies. Like really dumb.
You got to find a balance.
Like Michael Bay is one of my favorite directors. So
Can we get it? Can we get a short list? Can we get a top three off the top of your head of the last
directors?
week Or
Oh,
no.
movies?
Just bad action movies. First three that come to mind.
Oh, geez, in the last week I haven't watched. What did I just watched something last night. Now I can't remember. I watched Ambulance recently, which is a Michael Bay movie.
Oh my
Uh,
god. Yes.
I showed my girlfriend Transformers: Dark of the Moon, which is also a Michael Bay movie. And we watched Black Adam on Amazon. So those are, I think that's the most recent three that I've watched. But like I'd really rather. I love surfing documentaries. I don't know why, because I don't surf. I don't have a body for surfing. I'm not a beach guy, but I love movies
I was
about
gonna say
surfing.
Blue Crush is one of my favorite movies,
That's
and
a
I
good
don't
movie.
surf either. It's a great
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
I was gonna be a little taken back because I'm from Toledo, Ohio. I'm from just the other
cool.
end of where you're we're on the opposite ends of the top of the heart, you know what I'm saying? And I'm surfing and I'm like, that doesn't track. That doesn't track.
It's
Nobody's
relaxing
trying to surf
though.
in Lake Erie.
There's something about surfing though that is
Beautiful.
weirdly, yeah. It's a. I like the entire vibe of that group, the people that do it, because it's not me. It's in no way me. Like I'm a very neurotic man, and I'm not laid back in any way. But I do love. Documentary and really bad action movies. Those are that's my favorite.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's legit. So how do I put this? All right, so to bring it back just a tiny bit though to Bloodlines Jersey Devil Curse, right? The viewer there's a specific experience that takes place when you watch this documentary, right? And at least for somebody like me, for myself, I can say I've watched a bunch of your documentaries over the years, and watching this was just like a slap in the face different. Like this is not, the expectation of a typical small town monsters production. This is not a typical Seth Breedlove film, and I felt like you were branching off into something more experimental, but I would honestly like to view it more as a foreshadowing of a direction. There's a refining process that's taking place when you watch this, and that is you split the viewer between lore, building the legend, and walking us through some of the biggest takeaways in the story, and there's this pull between, hey, these are historical accounts that are being acted out. This is, 18 whatever, 1903, da 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 da. These scenes, and they come in just as announced as any other scene. And they just drop right into it. And then it pulls into shucks, I'm forgetting the specific term, but the person who's in charge of the land, or a local folklorist, right? Or you pull into experts, into historians and folklorists, and then it just cuts into it, and the tale itself, right? The reenactment holds just as much predominance, right, in the documentary as every other scene, and completely unannounced. To me, and I'm sorry, I don't even know if this is a question at this point, but to me, what that had, right, in terms of experience was, I'm delivering you the folklore, the tales, the stories around the Jersey Devil in a visual sense, and now we're going to hear some of the surrounding story, the peripheral of it, but it's one of the most unique experiences I've had watching a documentary, and I would just love to pick your brain and just tell me what the hell's going on.
I think that's super
What
cool.
is that? What is that?
Did you see? Okay, so the big question is, have you seen Momo?
A long time
our
ago.
Momo.
Okay.
So Momo, our Momo movie, it uses a similar style of storytelling in that it switches back and forth between a narrative and a documentary, and it's been something I've been tinkering with basically since I don't know where we started doing it. I'm trying to think of I think Bray Road really started to integrate recreations, but Flatwoods really did too. but I got away from that with Momo and started to try to figure out if we could integrate narrative, so like almost like a fictionalized version of the events into a documentary, and see how that played, with the documentary almost acting as like a debunking of what we had just shown narratively. And so in Momo, it's all sort of centered around this fake television show, which is like a late night. It's supposed to be sort of like a late night horror host who's going to show you like a fake drive-in movie version from the 1970s, this unreleased movie from the 1970s about Momo. And then the documentary comes in and sort of like sets the record straight on what you just saw. And it was very carefully laid out, very, very like tongue in cheek. It's honestly like as much of a parody of like modern day paranormal television as it is anything. But it was all centered around like this hook. And when we got into doing Jersey Devil, we knew we wanted to do something similar in that it was going to jump back and forth between narrative and documentary. We had a meeting with myself and Heather, who's our researcher and producer on the movie, and Jason, who wrote the script for the narrative moments. And we originally this was going to be originally an all narrative. It was going to be a narrative Jersey Devil movie. And it was gonna, the title of the movie, by the way, makes no sense. The Bloodlines, and that's because the original movie that we were gonna make was that it's similar. There's these, you see these three eras of time playing out. Each era was gonna be about the same characters that you see in the narrative moments in this movie, but they're all connected by this Jersey Devil curse, which there's still pieces. The cool thing to me of it is if you watch the movie, there's little hints of this throughout. So you keep seeing the sigil, like the big table, the tableau, I guess they call it, like the big table, the big stone table in the woods that keeps popping up. And what that's supposed to be hinting at is one of the versions of the Jersey Devil legend is that it was like a demon conjured from hell through like witchcraft or something. And so we just buried that in there as like a little throwback, a little nod to that version of events. But that's why it keeps popping up. You see the sigil or the tableau in all three sections of the movie. But basically the movie, that version of the movie was originally going to open with the midwife scene. She was going to be cursed with like some sort of mark on her. And then throughout the movie, each section of the movie was going to end with you finding the mark on the other people. So like one of the criminals in the silent movie section was going to have it. And then like in the modern or the 80s section, the park ranger was going to be, have like the same mark on him. Like, so each generation was cursed by the Jersey Devil. That didn't happen, obviously. And, so yeah, the in terms of what we're doing with the story in this one is we're presenting you with a version of events that probably never happened, but that are loosely based on stories that are out there, like eyewitness events that might be out there. In the case of the midwife scene, that is the closest to an actual event, right? Because what we're actually showing you is a version of what a lot of people say is the origin story of the Jersey Devil. It's just told through the midwife's perspective rather than like Mother Leeds or the husband or whatever. The silent movie era is just us having fun. We knew we wanted it set in 1911. And Jason gave me two options. One was the story of like a school teacher who has to hole up in the school with all these kids while the town's being attacked by the Jersey Devil, which again, like all that is based on stuff that was written about in the newspapers, that kids were being terrified off the playgrounds by Jersey Devil and all that stuff. But he had pitched me this idea of bank robbers that were on the lam, and I was like, we got to do it because we've never done it before. We might as well do it. And then the third section is again loosely based on real events, which was during the 80s. There were stories about park rangers encountering the Jersey Devil. And so basically each section is like, what would that actually look like? Or how can we do it in a way that would sort of harken back to a filmmaking style from that era? So you get, the 1911s section, or is it 19? Maybe it's 1909. I can't remember. But that section's in silent movie format. And then the 80s section is kind of like this Spielbergian lens flares. We shot it on anamorphics, so it has a very like specific look. And then the midwife scene we shot in sort of like a A24, A24 via Terry Gilliam style. But as far as what we're saying with those sections, or what I'm saying with those sections or whatever, I kind of decided I was just going to leave it up to the audience, because with MoMA, we made everything explicit. So we told the audience everything that they were seeing and why they were seeing it and everything. And in this case, I decided I was just going to leave it up to the audience. And it might seem lazy, but to me, there is a general disrespect to people that are into the paranormal or folklore that I see through the mainstream. And I forget what it was, but I was watching an interview with some director, and it might have been like Edgar Wright or someone. They were talking about respecting your audience, and I guess I brought that into this. Now I'm wondering if I made a mistake, because a lot of people don't seem to get this movie at all. But basically, I just wanted to show 3 like sort of outlandish, over the top versions of what might have happened to people encountering the Jersey Devil throughout the 3 most prominent eras of Jersey Devil encounters, and then sort of deconstruct it through the interviews and the documentary portion of the movie. Because I will say, in terms of our movies, this is by far the most skeptical, the most what was it? It's a dissection of the legend more so than like a true exploration of it in the way that some of our other movies are. And it wasn't through, I don't tell or interview people what to say. Like, anyone that's interviewed in a movie is speaking from their own experience or like their own research. I just know we interviewed only 5 people in this movie, and they were all pretty wildly skeptical of the Jersey Devil, and that comes through in the movie, which works to me because it's butted up against these really wild, action-packed monster encounter sequences. And then all of a sudden you're watching, folklorists say that there's probably no Jersey Devil flying around. So I thought it was interesting, the dichotomy between the two. I don't know if I answered your question. I talked around it really well.
I don't remember it, but I remember being captivated, which I think you did a great job as. Wait, was it even my question? Whatever. No. That was excellent, and yeah, I think you dug into it pretty well. Yeah, I definitely picked up on the dichotomy. Between the more narrative aspects of it, right? The reenactments, things like that. And it helps me as a viewer, as an audience member, to know now that the reenactment scenes are actually a conglomeration, right? They're a combination of multiple different types of events, maybe over couple separations of years, so on and so forth.
This is one of those movies that we've made too, where I think it will reward multiple viewings, because a lot of this stuff is laid out through either interviews. There's a reason Ellie keeps coming back on, kind of like reading newspaper accounts from that time period, and it's to sort of tell you like this is based loosely on actual events. Like that's kind of the inspiration behind that. But I just felt like in this case, I didn't want to do something that was as overt as what we had done with Momo, where there was a storytelling device in place that would transition into the narrative moments. I just didn't want to do it. And maybe that was maybe that was a mistake, and down the road I'll watch it. And I haven't actually sat down and just watched the movie apart from editing it, because you watch it so many times when you're editing it, and then you watch it a million times when you're trying to get it finalized and out to an audience. So maybe someday I'll rewatch it and really second guess my decision there. But yeah, I I know I was really proud of the way, especially the midwife scene turned out. Like, that was a sequence where I feel like if we had, maybe a bigger budget and a script in place, that was a movie we could make. Like, that's a full-on, like, midwife retelling of the Jersey Devil movie. I think we could have really done something interesting with that. I don't know that we'll ever do that, but that's, I was proud of the way that turned out, and the acting in that sequence is really great too.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I remember I kept asking you, Gil, if the stories were real. Like, did this really happen?
Yeah, I mean that's the one that is based on the actual legend. So there's so many versions of that legend, that origin story. But one of them is that the Mrs. Leeds has a baby, and it's just her and the midwife in the house, and she births a demon, and the demon, and we did some weird stuff with that in the moment. Like, I had the cradle rocking for no apparent reason, even though there's no baby in the house really. And I thought that was kind of cool and fun. And so we did things that I normally wouldn't do, just from a filmmaking perspective. We had a lot of, I'll tell you guys, I haven't told anyone this, but this is probably the last movie I'll make that kind of like combines those two elements, doc with narrative, to this extreme. Mostly because I don't think people want it. And so going forward, if we make a narrative, it's going to be a narrative. If we make a doc, it's going to be a doc. That doesn't mean we're not going to do recreations or whatever, but as far as like combining the narrative storytelling style, the fictionalized narrative storytelling style with documentary, I think it throws an audience in a way that I wasn't necessarily expecting it to. I love it. Like, I have a blast with it. But I don't find that the movies I've done this with have been finding their audience in the way that some of our other stuff does. Like, my personal favorite movie we've made is The Mark of the Bell Witch. Like, that's the movie that I've made that I'm like most proud of making and think really turned out great. But I do think like Momo is one of my favorites that we've made. And this is going to Bloodlines is probably going to be one of my favorites, just because the creative process to bring it to the screen is so collaborative and creative, and everyone kind of gets to come together and offer ideas in a way that maybe like a lot of our other movies, it's not quite the same.
That bums me out a little bit, because I felt like this was a little bit Reservoir Dogs, and I was expecting a Pulp Fiction to come up later.
There might be.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the timeline in Tarantino, like how he started editing, and like you can see at least I can see a direct line between Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. And it was like Reservoir Dogs, it was a little rough. You know, like you had to see Pulp Fiction to go back to Reservoir Dogs, at least for me to be like, oh, like it was,
I feel like Momo was our Reservoir Dogs and this was my Pulp Fiction, is the way I feel about it. But that's because I'm looking at it from like the creator standpoint, which was I was not comfortable enough with Momo to just tell the story the way I wanted to tell it. I felt like we had to like come up with this device that would like explain everything. And in this one, I was just comfortable enough and confident enough with it to be like, I'm just going to go for it and let the audience make of it what they will.
Gotcha.
And I find like that's my favorite kind of story to tell too. So maybe, but again, like I'm probably wrong, because it seems like I have anymore. I feel like whatever my concept of what our audience wants or what the audience wants, it does not seem to run along with what we gauge as like a successful SDM release. Because we get super stoked behind the scenes about stuff like Jersey Devil or Momo or Mark of the Bell Witch, and all three of those movies have been just tanks, like just absolute bombs. And then something that I'm not expecting to really hit, like American Werewolves, which I had a blast making, by the way. Like American Werewolves was the most fun I've had editing a movie, like just editing a movie in a very long time. There's a reason I'm making a sequel to it. But that I was not expecting that movie to take off. I wasn't expecting Skinwalker, Howl of the Rougarou to take off. like it did. I never expected On the Trail of Bigfoot to become like the franchise that is like carrying our company at this point. So, but I like what I like, and our audience likes what they like. Hopefully, occasionally, like the two things correspond, and that's what keeps us afloat. The surprising thing about STM is no matter what we do, when I talk about these movies being bombs, it's not that they won't find an audience, because they do. Like Momo's been seen by like 3 or 4 million people. But Mark of the Bell Witch it was just aired on television in the UK. The Lake Michigan Mothman, which was like my least favorite movie we've ever made. It was aired on television. Like it, they find their audience, but when I gauge the success of one of our movies anymore, it's based on how the audience responds to it, and if it can find an audience. I actually don't consider Momo a true flop, because there's like this huge cult following for it. People that actually get it, like get what we were doing and get the 70s aesthetic of it and all that kind of stuff. But it's tricky because you also have to keep a business afloat and people employed. So you can't just make stuff based on like, well, I want to do this right now. So, yeah.
Now, when you say audience, are you talking about like fanatics like me who, like, the day that something comes out, they've already had friends plan to come over to their house to watch it? No clue about what. Oh yeah, no, I'm a weirdo. So no, but I did. Selena, day that it came out, within a few days, Betsabe, Selena, and we were all like watching it in the living room, at least with.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, dude. I think I texted you about that. Or
that's a genuine smile, by the way. That makes me feel good. Like
no, dude, totally.
He was very excited.
Yeah.
Yes. I invited
Gil
friends. You guys. Like.
Gil, did we watch it on our own first?
Yes, we watched the night it came out.
Yeah, and then
I waited
we
till you got
invited
home.
people over to watch it.
Yeah. No.
I thought it was good.
What I'm referring to is, that's a good question though, because there's two aspects to it. There's our audience are the diehards, like the people that either back the Kickstarters or are there on launch day of VOD or whatever. Like that's our audience, and that those people like you will show up almost every time, and that's
you got us.
You are the reason. Like you're the reason that we exist today. But the reason we can continue to grow is an audience that that finds our stuff, that continues to find our stuff on the larger platforms and stuff like that. So I tend to make movies for a general audience, but occasionally I don't, and that would be Momo was not made for a general audience. That was made for a very niche like an audience of Bigfoot enthusiasts who liked drive-in movies and really bad horror movies from the 70s. That was like the audience that movie was made for. Or American Werewolves, it's weird that movie found such a huge audience like it has, because that movie was made for people like me who grew up on late 80s, early 90s paranormal television. I mean, like it wasn't intended to necessarily be a hit. Not that I didn't want it to be a hit, but you just like, you're making something, you're like, okay, I can either just go really basic with this and let witnesses tell their stories and like intercut some spooky, recreations, or we can get real weird. And I think that movie's really weird. Like, I don't know that people know how weird that movie is. American Werewolves has some of the most bizarre editing choices I've ever made. Like, I did things that as I was doing it, there were other people working in the office with me when I was doing it. I was literally sitting there laughing, like not at witness stories or anything, but there were like, and you had to be careful with this, by the way, because if you're doing some of the really hokey stuff over a witness story, it does kind of like demean the witness in a way that I was not comfortable with. So it wasn't about that. It was like, I'd be editing, the judge tells his story about jogging. And and I did this thing where like there's a double exposure of like a werewolf head in the top right hand corner of the screen,
I
and then there's
literally
like
didn't notice this.
a cornfield with someone running, and like
Yeah.
it's so it works in the moment, but when you're looking at it on its own, that scene was the scene where I like really pushed it as far as I could with like this silly sort of like 90s paranormal television editing styles, and then pushed it as far as I could, and then rewatched the sequence, and it was creepy and unsettling, especially with the music, in a way that worked so well. And I was like, all right, then this is the rest of the movie now. I'm going to go back through. I had edited the movie. There's a very early cut of that movie that is just 100% straight ahead, typical STM, nothing stylized about it, just people telling their stories. And then there's a version, the next cut is just full on insanity. Like, to me, if you see the
version.
two, yeah,
At
if
least
you
that
see the
director's cut.
right, if you see the two versions, well, there's a version of Jersey Devil that has the silent movie section with talking, because that was not originally intended to be a silent movie. What happened is I was cutting it, and we had run into a lot of issues during the filming of that sequence. There were sound issues. We were filming a bunch of it outside, and there was also like we kept running into the fact that our actors didn't quite understand like which emotion they were supposed to be portraying, like if it's supposed to be silly or if like they're supposed to be going over the top. And so we were trying to tell that section in like a straightforward horror movie style, similar to the midwife sequence. And I had a version of it edited together. This I could actually show you. If you hit me up later, I'll share a link, as long as you promise never to share it with anyone.
I will. Share it with
and
everyone. No,
I have. It'll be on Facebook later tonight.
No. I would love to see it.
But there's a version of it, and it didn't work. Like, we were all the way through the editing of the movie, and that sequence I kept going back to. And finally, this one night, I could not sleep. It was late at night, and I got up, and I had my son was in bed with me, because he's having a hard time sleeping on his own right now. So like, he's in bed with me, and I wake up, and I go into the office room, and I sit down. This is around 3 a.m. And I couldn't sleep because it kept coming back to me that the acting was perfect for a silent movie, and that was originally something we had discussed. So I went in and I wrote down really like bad looking, like they look terrible, but little title cards that read the dialogue. And I had to change all the dialogue because a lot of the lines were completely different. But I had to change all the dialogue, and then I cut those lines into the movie and cut out all the sound. And I watched it back. No music, no nothing. And I was like, holy crap, this works. Like, this works as a silent movie. And so then I sent it to everyone on the crew, and everyone said this works. And so then we had to actually go back in and recut it, to play better as a silent movie. And then Zach went in and created all those really like early 1900s looking silent film cards, the title cards and everything. And then that movie, formed itself. That's actually my favorite part of filmmaking, is like finding the style of the movie in the edit. And that's why I always say the editor is actually the director on a documentary. It's not there. I don't even know if there is such a thing as a director on a documentary that isn't the editor. 'Cause to me, it's like that the story comes into play through the edit, and a lot of that comes into focus through the edit. And that happened twice this year. That happened with American Werewolves, and then it happened with that section of Jersey Devil. But it's really happened quite a few times. Like On the Trail of UFOs season 1, the editing style of that is really chaotic compared to what I usually do. I'm like, I tend to be like really methodical and let stuff play out a little while, and like I'm not into quick cutting. But that was a series where like in the edit I realized I really wanted to push the sort of chaotic, like quick cutting style. I watched a lot of like Peter McKinnon and stuff like that, trying to figure out how to do that. but yeah, I don't know what the question was, but I just rambled for like 10 minutes about whatever.
That was perfect.
Betsabe, I'm surprised you're not just chomping at the bit over there. Betsabe is also in videography. And I'm just like sitting here trying to read her face. Like, is she with this? Is she not with
I'm
this?
just
Like,
listening. It's very
it's
interesting to
like,
hear other people's style, you know?
I thought it would be an explosion over here.
What do you edit, or what do you do, like videography wise?
I mean, money-wise, it's weddings, but music videos,
Hmm.
short films. I do acting as well, so that's what got me into video, to learn how to work behind the camera, not just in front of the camera, because I feel like that helps the acting as well, just knowing both sides of it. Um, but yeah, like nothing crazy like your documentaries for sure.
I don't think like what we do is no. I don't think it's any different from what you do or any like really like not. This isn't an insult to you. This is what I consider us like low level like film people do. Because we shoot everything on like Sony A7S3s. We're not shooting. We don't shoot on anything crazy. The craziest camera we have is the Ronin M, whatever that weird Ronin camera is with the
Hmm.
the gimbal like attached to it, the cinema one.
Yeah.
We have one of those, which was just out of necessity. That's like the craziest camera we have. But we had like for a while we had a Sony FS7 and it got too like it was too much of a hassle to lug that out into the woods. To film us. So I don't think anything we operate really small scale. Crews like the crew for American Werewolves was four of us, and the recreations were shot by two guys, one guy in the suit and Andy who was 18 at the time. He was like filming the actual like recreations, but just B-roll shots of the guy in the suit. And that's how we have functioned that way since the earliest days. It's to the point where even though we're getting bigger each year, I feel like we're operating at peak when we are as small as we can get, as small scale as we can get.
Yeah.
And that's actually that kind of like feeds into the idea of what I was saying about like getting away from doing the narrative mixed with doc style. It needs to going forward. I want it to be one or the other. Like if we're doing something fictional, it needs to be a fictional narrative movie. If we're doing a documentary, it can be a documentary. It can integrate as much of the recreation, like over the top recreations, whatever, as we want. I just don't want to mix up those two storytelling styles anymore because it gets away from what I do know for us works, and that is we're a very small scale company. I love On the Trail of Bigfoot because it's just me in the woods with a camera in my hand. At least it was like before we did the Alaska trip, and that was a little like we had a crew of 4 with me on that shoot, so it was a 5-man crew. But I prefer to just be the guy out filming stuff. I was telling someone the other day, like the first On the Trail of Bigfoot series was literally just me with a camera, which is weird because I was on camera. So the way I did that is I'd put a wide on a tripod, and then I might have something else like a handy cam on another tripod pointed over my shoulder. And then after I was done shooting dialogue scenes that I was in, I would switch into holding a camera over the witness shoulder with them like reacting, and then I'd have the witness or someone else shoot me reacting to them like
That's
talking,
so
and then you
funny.
cut all that together and you end up with like 4 camera angles, but that's how you make it work. And
Yeah.
I I love that kind of like that's my favorite kind of
I
filmmaking.
feel like you get
Yeah.
more out of it if it's like a smaller group. I don't know if you ever heard of the 48-hour film festival. And
Yeah.
like when I first started doing that, it was like a group of like 10, 15 people, and it was just chaotic because, everyone's like pitching their own ideas, everyone wants to do something different. And once we just went to like from 10 to like 5 for people, it would be faster. We would get stuff done. It wasn't chaotic, and like I feel like everyone's like in the same mindset as well.
Hmm.
I don't know, and it's just more fun too as well because I feel like you're not worrying about everyone else, you know?
And your ideas, I think, you actually get to implement more of your ideas into the
Yeah,
process, which
your
is
voice
Yeah.
is a
that's
little
the biggest.
louder.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah, that's the biggest
meaningful.
problem with like a huge crew. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
I mean, like for my crew, it's just me and sometimes Joey.
mhm. That's good though.
So
Yeah,
so
we
I
get a
do
lot of done.
I do want to pull it back a little bit to the paranormal, although I am
Hmm.
geeking out on this. But okay, my job, search engine optimization. I am a pro at searching and creeping professionally.
Hmm.
That's my job.
Hmm.
Dug up your old archives of Coast to Coast.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yes.
Did you
Also,
catch the one where I slept through my time slot and they were like frantically trying to get me on the phone? Did you get
that
that
wasn't
one?
with George Knapp, was it?
I
That
was
wasn't
no,
George Knapp.
that was Nori.
That was
That was
Nori. Okay,
Nori.
yeah,
Maybe
I mean
like
that kind of makes sense for Nori.
2 years ago. Yeah, I was supposed to Snorri.
I
I like Nori, by the way. I've been with him
I
like two or three times. I was with him out in
fucking
Colorado
love
back in 2017 or something. He's a cool guy.
fucking love Nori, but the fact that you just said Snorri is going to stick with
Snore.
me every night as I fall asleep listening to
I
the
don't
night
call him that. I
before's.
just saw that
No,
online
no, no,
somewhere.
no.
So.
We have it on. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, George Snorri. So, no, no, no. Love them. Love George Snorri. Love George Knapp. Obviously, I dig into the Art Bell like classic. Like how the hell can't you?
Yeah.
And but something stuck out to me, and I think Selena was gonna say this earlier, and I'm sorry for cutting you off way earlier in the show. And I'm looking at the book right now because it is coming down the pike on our end. Something that stood out to me, listening to your old interviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
Flatwoods Monster, right? That's one, and it's okay, 100%. This platform is for change. If you changed your mind, totally legit. But based off of past interviews that you've done, you said Flatwoods was one, and I'm not quoting verbatim here because you're literally here, so tell me what you feel. But Flatwoods was one where you were like, basically, then I saw her face, now I'm a believer. Like, you came in Smash Mouth style, and like,
Oh yeah.
and you were just like, yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
something freaking happened here. And that's
No.
that's
Yeah.
something that I hinted at earlier. You're not afraid with dedicating an entire production to
Mhm.
like their skepticism. So the fact
No.
that you came in and you were like, I'm into this. Sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
No. That remains the one. That one and Thunderbirds. Those are the two. I mean, I also you got to understand. I place Bigfoot on a different level because I saw one.
Oh
So
wow.
like.
What the
You
hold
actually
on,
saw
stop the
one?
show. No, we're
So
talking
yeah.
about
So
this.
we can, but like my opinion is Bigfoot's real, so I don't even necessarily consider it a cryptid anymore. Like because I've seen one, so it's my
Fair.
perspective on it is very different. But Flatwoods Monster, I 100% believe that's a real thing. I don't think it's a creature. I think they saw an experimental rocket because that's what they say they saw. Like when you watch our movie and you hear the actual witnesses say what they saw, what they're saying they saw was a thing that was shaped like a, what does he say, like a B, what is it, a B-12 rocket or B-2 rocket, some sort of rocket, I forget. Mm-hmm. He has an actual rocket that he references that it looked like. He doesn't talk about arms or legs or anything. Like he basically says they saw a rocket that was hovering. So I think they saw some sort of like experimental rocket. So I believe my son asks me this all the time, if Flatwoods Monster is real, and I say yes, because I think it was real. I think they saw some sort of experimental rocket. And then Thunderbirds I think are real too. So
Okay, all right, we need to go there. I'm sorry.
And then I
but
saw
we
a
need to go
Bigfoot.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Okay, all right. Let's bring it to the cherry on top. Thunderbirds, please, if you would.
Well, Thunderbirds, I
What
think,
about
are real.
Bigfoot?
No,
That's where I thought he was going.
That's the cherry. That's the cherry. But like, but like
Thunderbirds, I just think are real because
anticipation.
I think Thunderbirds are real because we already know there's abnormally large people, right? Like there was the most interesting thing about Alton, Illinois, where Terror in the Skies begins, is that it was home to the world's tallest man at the time. I can't remember his name now because I don't know. I was just there a year ago, so I should remember. But world's tallest man, he was like 11 feet tall, 9 feet tall. 9 feet sounds more realistic than 11, but maybe it's not. Maybe he was 11
Well done,
feet.
you know,
He's
over
70
there.
feet tall.
Yeah.
You're coming to this show for facts.
You're in the
sorry.
wrong place if you're. I basically dropped out of high school, so you're never gonna get facts from me. But it was home to the world's tallest man, and I think that's such an interesting correlation to what we're talking about here, which is I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that there is some sort of undiscovered species of massive bird. Like that's absurd. You'd see them in planes, like whatever. One would get hit by a car, but I do think that there are abnormally large variations of known birds. So you might get a freak, like a freak. I'm not calling no insult to the bird, but you might get a freak bird who's substantially larger than another bird in that in that species, whatever, not species, but class of bird.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, is that that's based on the fact that there are so many witnesses that I've spoken to who have seen these things that they're either all crazy or they misidentified in one case, like in Terror in the Skies, one of the witnesses talked about seeing one of these things land on the road right in front of their car and take off. And this is someone I'm friends with, by the way, which kind of like throws another wrench in the works. But
Totally.
yeah, my opinion just formed over the fact that I think that there's probably like freak birds that are like substantially larger than other birds. And they, it's not common, but there's enough of them that people see them every now and then. And that also probably accounts for a lot of the Mothman sightings, by the way, from the 66, 67 wave. But Mothman's a totally different thing. People ask me what I think of Mothman, and I also think Mothman was real, but I'm talking about there were so many different things seen during 66 and 67 and even up till present day that there isn't one Mothman. There's not like one. There's so many variations on what was seen in Point Pleasant that it depends on which version of the Mothman you're asking me if it was real. I think a lot of the Mothman sightings were owls. I think there were unusual encounters during that year that people might have just attributed to Mothman when they were seeing something else. There's a really cool sighting that Keel wrote about of a hairy Mothman running through the TNT area that was seen by two hunters. And I think they saw a Bigfoot. And I think that because I've had an encounter in the TNT area with something throwing rocks at me that I think was like probably a Bigfoot, because this happened in the middle of the night. We don't talk about this event very often because it's surrounded by insanity. I was there filming a Japanese television show. The Japanese television people were hoaxing me, which I was aware of as it was happening. And this happened while they were attempting to perpetrate a hoax, but was not part of that hoax. So I don't tell the story because it's like so insane.
Yeah.
Bigfoot would pick that exact fucking moment. Because that is what Bigfoot is the best professional at. Is like, haha, you got cameras, I'm perpetually blurry. And it's just like, haha, you think you got evidence? I'm getting you during a hoax show.
If you can find that show, it's really great. There's this really awkward scene where a man stripped naked in front of me and my crew and like 8 other men and took a bath over a roaring fire in a horse trough.
I think I saw.
I thought I was about to watch the man boil himself to death on a fire, but it didn't happen. It was really unusual. It was great. It was hilarious.
But tell us about this rock throwing. What escalated here? What what went
Oh,
down?
dude, for real,
If you would,
it is a
please.
complex. It's a very complex story. Like we were out in the short version of it is we were in the woods. I was supposed to be leading a crew of people. By the way, I'm not like an outdoorsman. I grew up in the woods, but like I'm not a hunter. I don't know the wildlife. I have people on my crew who do that, and I have them on the crew to do that, so I don't have to. I was leading this crew. They were desperately trying to get us back to another end of the TNT area because they had a guy hiding in some bushes, waiting to like shake the bushes and make a bunch of noise so we would think it was the Mothman. They were desperately trying to get us back there. Myself and Brandon Dalo, who does the music for our movies, would not go. And so they ended up leaving us. And after they left us, we had rocks thrown at us from a hill somewhere in the complete opposite direction of where everyone else had just gone off to. We know that while this was happening, the crew, what was left of my crew who went back with the Japanese crew and the Japanese crew were all down probably acres away from where we were attempting to perpetrate this hoax. So I'm well aware it was not any of them. But something was throwing rocks at us with extreme precision, like to the point where Brandon and I were walking through an open field with a giant. There was like a dead tree in the middle of the field. We're in the TNT area. We're not on. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the TNT area, but it's like a very expansive like wildlife management area that used to be a munitions manufacturing facility, plant, whatever, like factory, but it was stretched over acres and acres. And we came into this field and something threw a rock from about 80 yards behind us that hit this tree in the middle of this field dead on at such a volume that it was like it had been hit by another, like someone had walked up to it and just smacked a bat up against it. Like it was that loud. So that was the incident that we had happen there. That's not my sighting story. My sighting story happened in Minerva.
Tell us about Minerva, man. You're killing
Well,
me. If it's okay, I want to hear. You got me on the anticipation.
Well, this is all documented. So we made we do a lot of YouTube stuff now. Our YouTube channel, and I did a 5-episode series called The Bigfoot Project. Heather, who's a researcher, owns property outside of Minerva. It's property with like a history of Bigfoot sightings. Her mother-in-law saw a Bigfoot there in December a few years ago. Mm-hmm. We were going down to this hunting cabin down there, and we were going to do a show called The Bigfoot Project that was mostly going to be like an in-the-field podcast. That was the original idea behind it. We'd take people there, we would interview them, and then we go around the woods and probably nothing would happen was the thought process. Like, because I've been filming for years. I've been doing this for 8 years. And in that time, I've only had like 3 or 4 things happen. And what's weird is 3 of them have happened in the last year. So of the 4 things that have happened to me while I was out filming, 3 of them just happened in the last 365 days. So, but I've been doing this for a very long time. And, her and I were out at a cabin, at the hunting cabin that's on her property. She owns like 400 plus acres. We were on at a hunting cabin. We had our kids. I had my son. She had her kids, and her husband was there. And we were at the hunting cabin. And the night before my sighting, her and I had an incident that was even almost crazier than the actual sighting. Like we had something, like multiple somethings were throwing rocks at us, hitting trees, walking up to us in the woods. Like it was wild. This went on for quite a while, like 2 hours. It's all documented in the Bigfoot Project episode 1, which is on our YouTube. But the next day I was out hanging trail cams around the property with Corey, who owns the property, and then Courtney, who's one of our cinematographers. And we were on a ATV. We were on a gator. I was like in the passenger seat, and there's a clear cut that runs through the property, and we were driving kind of parallel to the clear cut, or not parallel. We crossed the clear cut. And as we crossed it, I happened to look up the hill, and just for like less than a second, I saw this dark brown, hair covered being with at a dead sprint clearing into the woods. Like I just caught it at the end. Like it was kind of like almost through the clear cut, and it had just headed it into the woods. And I saw the thing that my brain focused on was the muscle in the arm, because it's like it was pumping its arms like an Olympic sprinter, is the way I say it. And so
It's
when
like
I saw
very
it,
obvious.
like, oh yeah. It was broad daylight. It was 2 p.m. It was like on a sunny, clear, sunny day.
No.
And the thing crosses into the woods, and I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in an ATV going 20 miles an hour. And so I screamed stop. But as I screamed stop, I had already jumped. So I was, we're just at full speed. We're at full speed moving along, and I'm already jumping out, and I hit the ground, and we're on and you can, all this is on camera because Courtney was filming stuff in the back. When I hit the ground, I was like on a decline. I'm running toward this like line of brush, because the clear cut was overgrown with Ohio brush. And I hit this wall of brush and couldn't get any further past this like 6 foot tall line of brush. But it was dark brown, and it looked like a dude in a fursuit. Like, I don't know what else to say. It wasn't a guy in a fursuit, by the way, because it's private property in Ohio, farmland. So unless you're wanting to get shot by, like either the property owner that whose property I was on, or like a neighboring property, you'd be crazy. What's interesting is we found some things out about that exact area where I saw this thing that's really interesting. One is that a week later, I went out there with a friend of mine who's a reporter for the Canton Repository. I worked in newspapers for a while, so I have a lot of like newspaper contacts. And him and I went out there. He was doing a story on STM and like what we do. And he wanted to go see the location where I'd had this sighting. And we go there, and it turned out they had brush hogged that clear cut in the week that I hadn't been out there. So I get up there, and I find that there's a path right where I saw this thing.
Yeah.
Which suddenly made a lot more sense as to how this thing was actually running there, because where I saw it running, I thought it was literally sprinting through like 6 feet of brush, which also would have meant it was like 10 feet tall, which was insanity. But it wasn't 10 feet tall. I think it was actually pretty short. I think it was like 6.5 feet tall tops. But it was running on a path. So that's why it was where I saw it. The other thing that's really interesting about that area is that the area it was running from, there are in the neighborhood of like 75 dead cow carcasses right there. We're a little weirded out that there's so many.
Wait, no, hold on. What is this, like some Linda Moulton House situation?
No.
Is this okay?
It's not. It's nothing that sinister. No, I would say more than likely. No, I think more than likely the property owners. And I have to be careful here. Those farmers probably don't take great care of their cattle.
Oh, shit.
This is based on things I've learned about them since.
And so wasn't extraterrestrial.
Right. No, they lose a lot of the herd is what I've heard.
God damn.
But I do think that the Bigfoot that I saw might have been there sort of munching on some of the leftovers, because
I'm glad someone's getting something out of it.
Yeah. So that's my sighting. I just saw it for less than a second. And like I've had this weird thing where following my sighting, I've constantly been second guessing what I actually saw. So I don't know. I say I'm 99% sure that Bigfoot's real, but I'm not 100%, because there's the 1% of me that's like, maybe you're crazy, or like maybe you misidentified something or whatever.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, dude. Seth, thank you so much for sharing that with us tonight. And A, definitely don't think you're crazy. B, love small town monsters, and ask anybody that listens to the show, please, you can go to Amazon. You have Amazon Prime. Everybody gives their money to Papa Bezos. We can go to Amazon Prime, like rent the shows, or go to Small Down Monsters, their website, right? Hit them up, buy the DVD, hit up the show. Like, it's just, I hang on every word, right? Every production that y'all put out. I'm always stoked about it. We didn't even get to list of questions over here, literally around just American Werewolves. So like, huge fan.
Cool.
Yeah,
Hit me up
I don't
again,
know.
dude. We'll do a part 2.
Awesome.
I would absolutely love to. And what was I didn't catch it with the note. You mentioned that there was a part 2 coming up in the future of
Yes.
one of the documentaries, one of the shows. What could you?
It's American Werewolves. Yeah,
Yes!
we're doing.
Fuck yes.
We're shooting American Werewolves 2, the Skinwalkers. Later, probably early next year. Actually, we're gonna try to get back out to Sedona, and so we're gonna go out to more like the American Southwest and get into some of the really unsettling indigenous sightings that have happened out there. And this is all inspired by a guy that I interviewed while we were shooting On the Trail of UFO season 1, who brought a cooler that he claimed had a skinwalker hand in it. We're gonna get into some of the really unsettling kind of stuff.
It was shit. I can't remember his name. Investigator. He was a former police officer. Is that right? Or am I totally off the mark?
You mean from On the Trail of UFOs? Or
The
American
individual from the Southwest. He's part Navajo.
Okay.
Part Filipino. He's
This guy
Jonathan
is
Redbird Dover. That's who I'm thinking of.
Okay. I can't remember. It's been a hot minute. He
Gotcha.
was Hopi Elder is this guy, and
Okay,
it was
okay.
so yeah. I can't remember his full name either.
We're
Because
gonna-
dude, we do so many movies per year that
I
it's
know the
hard
names
to
are
keep
hard to
track.
remember. I want to geek out with you on names at some point
Mm-hmm.
off the record, but like I do want to geek out with you on names.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, dude. Yes, I am so excited for that. I did want to just throw out there for any of our Ohio fam, because Seth and I both from Ohio. Just seriously go out and hit up American Werewolves. I'm pretty sure one of the beginning, like the opening scenes of the opening situations, it's like a cat that's like it's a guy that's jogging in Ohio by cornfields. It might be the second scene in. I don't remember. It's been a minute. I watched it right when it came out in, I believe, July. Anyways,
That's the one with the double exposure.
yes, and it's awesome. And Selena can back me up. I had a small heart attack when the show started off in Ohio. I was like, no, this is not allowed to happen. I'm from there and I'm not aware of this, and it is awesome. Okay.
Cool.
I would say go to let's see. So I'm gonna get the full name. Bloodlines, the curse, or the Jersey Devil curse. Go to that for the artistic inspiration behind a lot of things. If you want the classic, like, we're just digging into some shit, American Werewolves. I'm okay with saying that. I love both of them for separate reasons. American Werewolves, it delivers that classic, like, documentary, like, gotcha. Like, you might be like killed jogging in the middle of the night, like jump in a pool. That's the only thing that'll save you. And it's so good. It's so raw, you know. But then Jersey Devil, that is something I would dig into as a podcaster, where I want to deliver the good skepticism. I want to deliver the good aspects of the story. It's something I would research and get into, which, like, I'm here for that shit. Like, I love that shit. I mean, we're literally doing a podcast.
Well, the difference is, so American Werewolves is all eyewitnesses, other than one person in the movie who hasn't had an encounter of their own. The rest, there's very little context in that movie. That was like something I wanted to do that we hadn't done before. That American Werewolves was the first movie we had made since Minerva that didn't have a narrator.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
no narration to kind of like tie things together. I was like, let's just get back to like witness stories and like front to back, just let witnesses tell their stories. And then Jersey Devil also doesn't have a narrator, but it's all about context. It's like analyzing the legend, whereas Jersey Devil's the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. Which is nuts because they both came out in the same year,
Mhm.
a few months apart.
Yeah.
But Seth, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm especially happy to have a fellow Buckeye on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
It means a lot to me. And I'm pretty big nerd, pretty big fan of your work in Small Town Monsters as a crew. Shout out Shannon LeGros. So like shout out everybody that's involved in Small Town Monsters. You make most of the entertainment that and material that I consume. I did want to ask, do you have any pluggables? Do you have anything you'd like to plug that you'd like to promote? Instagram, Facebook, social media, websites, Spotify, Yandex. How far do we want to go?
Well, you mentioned Ohio. We're doing our own event in Ohio.
I saw that
on
June.
June 3rd of next year in Canton, downtown Canton, Ohio, at the DoubleTree, and Shannon will be there. Lyle Blackburn will be there. Lauren Coleman will be there. It's his only out-of-state trip he's doing next year. The guys from Astonishing Legends are going to be there. Richard Haddam, who wrote the Mothman Prophecies movie, will be there. Jim Harold from the Paranormal Podcast will be there. Cliff Barrickman from Finding Bigfoot will be there. Justin
It'd be easier if you
Chernopesky from
said
Mountain
the folks
Beast
that
Mysteries.
weren't there.
Yeah. There's a lot of people coming, so we're really excited about that. And we're going to do Stan Gordon will be there. So we're trying to get I'm basically, I don't know if we're ever going to do another one of these, by the way. So it's like, as of right now, I'm going to say this is a one-time thing. So I kind of put together my dream list of people I wanted to be there. And so June 3rd of next year, we're going to do that. June 2nd, we're going to do a premiere of On the Trail of Bigfoot, Land of the Missing at my favorite place to show movies, which is the Canton Palace Theater, which is one of the most historic movie theaters in America. It's a really gorgeous, it's like the architecture is insane. There was actually like 40 of these theaters built back in the day, but it's kind of decorated in like this Spanish garden style. It's really cool. The ceiling looks like you're sitting under the stars and clouds move overhead, and it's really cool. So we're gonna do that on June 2nd next year. But yeah, Monster Fest. All of our YouTube stuff. We just put out the first episode of our On the Trail of Bigfoot Last Frontier tie-in, which is called the Alaskan Coastal Sasquatch, and that came out on Thanksgiving Day. Part 2 comes out on Christmas Day. So if you're not subscribed on YouTube, go there. And then Bloodlines: The Jersey Devil Curse just came out and it's available on Amazon too. Honestly, I don't know where the distributor dumped it because they kind of just dumped it out there and let us.
It's on Amazon
sink
Prime.
or swim. It's on Amazon Prime and some other iTunes.
It's where I
and
bought it.
places like that. Yeah. So you can go there and smalltownmonsters.com. We also publish books now. So we just released our first book, which is called The Kinderhook Creature and Beyond, which is a Bigfoot case from New York State that ties into a couple of our movies, but also has some really cool ties to like Sleepy Hollow and ghost sightings and UFO sightings and that kind of stuff too. So there's other things going on in that book. There's also another book we released called The Vegetable Man, which is a children's book. It's like a children's book that's part of a series called Curious Creatures. That's really adorable. And then we're putting out another book early next year, which will tie into one of our movies next year. The book is going to be called Texas Dogman Triangle. The movie's called The Dogman Triangle.
I already reached out to the author, and I am incredibly excited about that.
Oh, dude, yeah, Aaron's great. Aaron's great.
Reached out to him before I reached out to you. I was already just like, this book is coming out. We need to talk. I want you on the show. Like, I'm gonna read the book, and I think y'all were releasing like you said, there's a documentary piece that's going to coincide.
We already
with
shot.
This book. Is that right?
Yeah, we shot that back in October, and it was Shannon LeGros and Aaron the writer of the book, kind of
Hell yeah.
walking you through. It's cool because originally it was going to be almost like a an adaptation of the book, but it's not going to be that. It's actually much more of an expansion of the book than it is like a direct adaptation. I think it expands somewhat on what happens in the book. So we're really excited about that.
Hell yeah. Well, Seth, thank you so much for coming on tonight. For giving us updates, giving us all the behind the scenes, for sharing your Bigfoot story with us, sharing your thoughts, and yeah, man, thank you so much. You're always welcome back. We'd love to have you on again, and yeah, I
Awesome.
hope we talk soon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to the Black Cat Report and our interview with Seth Breedlove, founder and filmmaker of Small Town Monsters. Go right now, or maybe later, and check out his newest film, Bloodlines, The Jersey Devil Curse. And check out his whole filmography if you haven't. It's fantastic. Remember to like, review, and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, we'll see you on the other side.